This is our project at the moment. This is the Unified Transport Network, and we are Chris,
Callum,
and Joe. On our visit to Runcorn, these were the two strands that we found most interesting.
Hidden Nature.
During our site visit, we were able to experience other parts of Runcorn that wouldn't necessarily be easily accessible with the current infrastructure that is already in place.
As shown in the following film, these areas of Runcorn were disconnected due to their obscurity behind housing and their lack of connection to the infrastructure.
This map illustrates how disconnected the green spaces hidden around Runcorn are from the existing infrastructure.
Which leads us on to fragmented infrastructure.
The four main strands of Runcorn's transport infrastructure are pedestrian, roadways, railways, and canals. So we started to look into how each one of these transport infrastructures affects the city of Runcorn. And so initially we looked at commuter times from cars, pedestrians, and bicycles, and this highlighted how car-centric the city is.
And actually, these routes aren't all that different. The pedestrians and cyclists have to go the same way as a car, and it creates quite a boring walk.
So the canal network, as it is, has a very low speed of 4 miles per hour, which means it takes a long time to get anywhere outside of Runcorn. However, the nearby Manchester Shipping Canal has access to a higher speed limit, which would reduce the times it would take to transport goods or people through this network.
Here we've identified the key cities nearby to Runcorn and their current distance, their interface distance to arrive. And with H2 coming in, this will greatly speed up. So this is something we want to take in consideration, as the central site which we've picked will be the first point of entry into Runcorn from people visiting. The different topography identified here is going under bridges, then going back up the bridges again. And while this idea of topography doesn't really works in terms of separating them as their own separate entities, what we're going to try and do, taking consideration, is combine all these different levels of topography into one node.
So currently this is the configuration of all the transport networks where they overlap but they don't interact in any meaningful way, and this isn't something that we want. So this film kind of highlights that and shows how all these networks coalesce at Shopping City, but they don't interact with one another. They purely exist on their own planes.
From looking at these different cities, we realised that you would need a connection between each of these different modes of transport
to effectively traverse through a city.
So this diagram represents the different points where key forms of infrastructure were developed throughout Runcorn. Now, while these have been appropriately designed for their era, over time, what has been a missed opportunity and what our expedient infrastructure is reviewing is the opportunity to combine all aspects of these current infrastructures that are already in place.
Consequently, this is the area of site that we've chosen because of the intersection between all these planes of infrastructure.
This is a concept illustration of how the different forms of infrastructure intersect at the site.
The reason we chose the word network is because it's this bringing together of different strands into one combined knot, and we wanted to neatly sew all these different transport infrastructures together and to create one hub between them?
This is a 3D printed model that we've given a go. It's more of a conceptual model just to describe the various nodes that were analyzed with the maps that we produced before, and about how we could conceptualize and how these different aspects of infrastructure cross over and how they are weaved into the fabric of Runcorn, and by creating the central knotted area where our site will be, how we can connect them in a more efficient way.
This is the map that sort of puts all these points in their place.
By doing this, we hope to bring these different infrastructures together in a unified manner that will help improve Runcorn for the residents.
So how can we achieve this unification? So by implementing an autonomous system which allows the individual nodes to work in unison, this will allow for a free-flowing transport organism to spread across Runcorn.
The variation of industry within Runcorn is a perfect hotbed for the implementation of an autonomous system.
As a consequence of implementing an autonomous system, this will start to change how the landscape of Runcorn works.
By taking into account that the majority of Runcorn's residents do not currently own a car or a van, by having an autonomous electric vehicle system allows them to fully utilize the networks already in place within Runcorn.
This diagram shows how the autonomous car system will be able to service Runcorn easily, as most journeys are within 5 miles.
Although we have a focus on autonomous cars, we also have been looking at other autonomous vehicles, such as the canals and trains, and how they could influence Runcorn.
So one of the precedents we've been looking at is Sidewalk Labs in Toronto, and this is a multi-layered city that Google are trying to design, which brings together city building with digital technologies. And one of these key technologies is autonomous systems. And this has allowed them to free up more public realm because you don't need parking or different interfaces like that. And we'd like to see how this would affect Runcorn in the long term.
We want to look at our project in different phases as it progresses.
So this is phase 1, which is to reconnect the Runcorn ring.
We aim to connect the Runcorn ring back to the main canal leading to Manchester. By doing this, ships will no longer be restricted to the speed limits currently in place on the canal.
This will also help in bringing materials to site when constructing the unified transport hub.
For phase 2 of our project, we propose to implement a autonomous vehicle factory within Runcorn.
As previously discussed, these variations of industry within Runcorn, engineering, distribution, logistics and technology, are all the constituent factors you'd need to be able to implement autonomous vehicles. So hopefully not only will this bring in new people, but also provide variety of work within Runcorn.
Currently in Runcorn, 70% of jobs are service, with only 17% being manufacturing. Our project aims to balance out these numbers.
This is the location of where we'd implement the autonomous factory.
Having the factory in this location would provide access to both the canal and the rail network for bringing in materials and also exporting products.
Precedent with these types of factories show that they can create up to 10,500 new technology jobs within an area.
Hopefully with this implemented, the population of Runcorn would increase closer to the originally required 100,000 residents for Runcorn to operate successfully.
And within Runcorn, the new factory would create new links with the existing technology bases.
The Unified Transport Network Hub.
As previously discussed, this is where the site is for the Unified Transport Hub. This area includes the different transport links, and we want to bring these together in one singular node.
Our initial ideas on how the unified transport network could work.
The last phase is phase 4, and this is the opportunities that the Unified Transport Network brings.
Currently within Runcorn, there is a large amount of dedicated parking areas. These would no longer be required.
And they could be turned into new opportunities, such as parks and pedestrian access ways.
This is a perspective of a current street in Runcorn. There's a high amount of parking within the street, which reduces the pedestrians' access. However, with autonomous vehicles, roadways would be narrowed as well as one-way systems will be implemented, meaning that the leftover space within the street creates new opportunities for the residents of Runcorn.